Good morning, everyone. This is Priya. I'm a doctoral candidate at IIT Bombay. I welcome you all to this session, a very important discussion on valuation, financing, and incubation support for ventures organized by Women in Entrepreneurship Program, IIT Bombay. Women in Entrepreneurship Program, or what we call as WiE, is a CSR initiative by CGI India, which is led by Desai Sethi School of Entrepreneurship, IIT Bombay, to help women entrepreneurs at various stages of their entrepreneurial journey with a support system for networking, scaling operations, learning, and growing. We aims to build a community of women in entrepreneurship and leadership roles, to build strong bonds and lifelong friendships through a facilitating platform to celebrate and support the members through challenges, milestones, victories, and even failures. Through this community, we hope to enable a circular model of networking and ecosystem for women entrepreneurs. Our today's session is a part of our ongoing learning series for entrepreneurs, and today we will be discussing valuation, financing, and incubation support for ventures. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's session, Mr. Deric Karunesudas. He's a cybersecurity leader with more than 15 years of experience in cybersecurity products and services, including cloud security solutions, managed security services, cyber fraud assessments, information risk consulting, and data privacy. He has worked in the past with companies like Deloitte, Wipro, RSA, and presently is associated with British Telecom based in Singapore as Director of Cybersecurity for Southeast Asia, Japan, and South Korea region. Since he has worked across geographies like the US, Europe, Asia Pacific, and Middle East, he understands various cybersecurity economies and cultures. He's also a startup mentor and an angel investor. He has been a mentor and investor to many startups, including Several, Bytes 24/7, Encubay, and many more. And he's also closely associated with this Sethi School of Entrepreneurship at IIT Bombay. His first TEDx talk, which was out last year in September, which you can look up, and he talked about cybercrime and word of hackers there. Deric enjoys working with startups to fuel their growth story and believes in the philosophy of enjoying other people's success, which is like such an important and necessary trait. And he's a firm supporter of women entrepreneurs. So over to you, Deric, and thanks everyone for joining us here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Priya. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Fantastic. Thank you for inviting me and my home today. When Apana invited me to talk on valuation and funding, I was thinking, how do I start, right? So I think that the best way to start is, if you really want to know the value of money, go and try to borrow some. See, the question is, how to find the worth of your venture which you are actually starting. Valuation is always a very gray area. It's sometimes very irrational, right? There's no single formula to find pre-revenue valuation of a startup, right? There are many factors that decide the valuation. Traction, monthly active users, the lineage, the founders, is the startup founder a second-time startup guy? Has he previously failed a startup? All that element decide the valuation of a company. In fact, I would rather take a step back and say, forget valuation. The bigger question to ask is how to decide how much to raise when you're starting up, right? So there are many questions that goes through the founder's mind when they start up, right? It's a combination of art and science majorly. It's like looking at a blockchain network and trying to understand what is the intrinsic value of the entire technology. Is it the algorithm itself? So it all depends on how much the customers or the investors community are willing to pay for this founder who's trying to build or trying to solve a problem in the world, right? I would say, just like every other leader who starts as an intern first, right? Every IPO public company was once at a Series A stage or a pre-series stage, right? We can proudly talk about Zomato today when it has reached an IPO stage. 13, 14 years back, when they started, 21 rounds of funding till now, more than 30 investors in their cap table. I still remember 10 years back, they raised round about $50 million round, and and here they are today. What a success story, you know. And along the way, there's been so many changes in the Indian ecosystem. Just to give you some facts, right? India raised around about $15 billion last year in the startup space. There are in all around about 650 startups globally, 650 unicorns globally, and 80% of the unicorns are by only two countries, US and China. We have round about 40 unicorns currently. Uh, and that's why, I mean, why am I talking about unicorns majorly? It's also about milestones, right? I mean, you have to have one sort of benchmark to measure where you're probably your goal is from it, right? Couple of more things. So let me just give you an understanding of what valuation could be majorly. Let's take two scenarios. Scenario one, when a startup one has a revenue of $1 million, an EBITDA of 10%, and year-on-year growth of say 100%. Startup two has a same top line revenue of 1 million, but an EBITDA of 20% and a growth of year-on-year growth of 30%. So which startup would be of more value? Startup one or startup two? 3 seconds to think, right? 1, 2, 3. Startup one. Why? Because it talks about the growth story, right? 100% year-on-year excites the investor, right? It's always about the 10x, 100x story, that the growth that excites an investor to come in and give a higher valuation. So talking about valuation, it's like a fingerprint, right? I mean, every startup valuation would be different, but they always leave a lot of impression, right? And also it depends on the market size. It's like selling an accounting software to very boutique niche customer, or you want to sell Tally to everyone. How big the market is, right? Investors think maybe that way also. It's about also finding the future cash flow, right? And also when you start off, typically an angel investor, I mean, from my experience also, when you enter early as an investor, giving a valuation, generally investors don't like a higher valuation when they start off, because they are at an initial stage, pre-series A stage, which is it's an idea risk stage. They generally like to take a bigger pie, more equity, because they're at higher risk stage, and that's why they tend to generally negotiate a lower valuation. But it all depends on how many parameters you're thinking about when you're valuing, right? Typically, a venture capital firm or an angel investor at an initial round would look at 10x or 20x return in the next 3 to 4 years, and which is generally followed by a VC fund. Once an angel round happens, VC fund would go for a Series A, B, C, followed by a private equity player, which has a larger pool of capital, which tries to give a growth story for an already established company, putting around about $1 billion and try to grow it. And the last exit would be obviously getting into a public market through an IPO, right? So just to close my quick warm up talk would be, everyone has his own investment thesis, right? Every investor has his own investment thesis for the valuation and the equity that they want to have a share with, right? I mean, I still remember in 2011, 10, 12 years back, I was in Dubai and watching the India World Cup final, and at the same time, the first unicorn of India, Incubay, was declared, and things pretty much changed. Those were 2010-11 times. Things were absolutely warming up in India. Many didn't even know this word unicorn, and then when people started understanding the Incubay investment, how the rounds happened. Mumbai Angels in 2007, followed by a SoftBank, which gave Series C. Everybody started understanding. The ecosystem evolved after that. the VC ecosystem came up. They probably slowly started asking those questions, stopped asking those questions of, has this really worked in the US, this idea, or China? And could this be an investable round, right? So I just want to also close this by saying situations change every 2 years. People change, the investment thesis also changes. All the investors community who said no initially, you always need to keep in touch with them, show the traction, their thesis change, and their mindset will also change. On that happy note, let me introduce you to the first speaker, who's Ganga, and I think she's the right person to talk about the various ecosystem in the women entrepreneurship space. She just has spent 3 decades. Ganga has spent 3 decades in both corporate and academia, dealing with entrepreneurs. She's been a banker in the space for more than 15, 16 years, mentor faculty with Indian leading schools, and she's mentored and mentored a lot of startups in this space, including programs like Stanford Program, IIT Madras, GDC, and few others, right? And and I was so happy to know that she's almost completing a PhD in entrepreneurship. So who better than Ganga to talk about a space which is growing for women entrepreneurs, so much success story. And I personally believe, I'm a great supporter of women entrepreneurs. I think women entrepreneurs give better return to the investors than men founders. And Ganga, my question is, how do you see accelerators and incubators in the space evolving, supporting the ecosystem? And majorly, I feel idea has less value. It's entirely majorly about the execution, right? So what's your take on how accelerators and incubators fuel this ecosystem? How is the women in entrepreneur initiatives helping the ecosystem? And the question I want to start you with is, can we ever have a Y Combinator in India? Ganga, over to you.
Thank you, Deric. That is a real high note, and I don't know if we, So thanks, for this beautiful question. And I think before I just get on to the, the topic of the day, and which probably is comfortable. I mean, in the domain I'm from. Thank you, WiE Entrepreneur team, for this fabulous opportunity, and it doesn't excite me more than spending time, any time during the 24 hours. We love it. Thank you, Aparna. And I also have the opportunity of having my CEO, Poini Bhatt. She's had a very tight schedule, but I think we are very fortunate to have her with us. So while I'm going to be talking, I mean, please feel free to step in, Poini ma'am. I can see your name there, and we'd love to hear your inputs as we move along. Yeah, so thank you. And coming specifically to your question of Y Combinator, I would not say, I will take a very positive statement saying, yes, we are getting there. And I think some of the incubators and accelerators are already moving in that direction. Obviously, we are not trying to, so Indian ecosystem is a very different, framework. So the way the Western countries and the developed countries have their startup ecosystem is so different. So there are so many dynamics which play in the, the development or evolution of ecosystem, right? Startup ecosystem. Likewise, we have the best, minds coming in from across, but also we are developing something which is very local and which is, relevant to the Indian context. And that's where organization like SINE, Society for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which is part of the IITB campus, and various other incubators, early on had started off this journey. Of course, now we have some wonderful accelerators, incubators. We also have Deeksha doing some wonderful work. So, we all, as a community, we are all growing strong, strength by strength. And Poini, my boss, has played a very critical role in getting this whole thing for almost close to 2 decades. So in that note, I have just to be specific to the point and not go all over. I have a nice quick cryptic PPT. So I'm going to use that tool to really continue my discussion. Is that okay, Deric?
Awesome. That'll be wonderful.
Yeah, thanks. So here I go. You just need to tell me if my screen is visible.
Yes, it is visible.
So I think there was a beautiful question somebody asked in terms of what is unicorn, and thanks, Pony ma'am, for bringing that clarity. And Deric has extensively talked about this unicorn. This is the picture. So somebody who asked what is unicorn, actually unicorn is, Deric, what is unicorn in terms of figurative? The picture you see, what do you think it is?
It's a horse.
Yeah, so it's a horse which I think doesn't exist. It's an imaginary visionary. So I think that is the current talk and the hot discussion in the startup ecosystem. But I would also like to add another new trend which we're seeing these days. It's not new trend. I think another milestone, like a unicorn milestone, where we're talking of 100 crore valuation. I think the IPO route is also something which is very, I would say is a desired milestone. So yesterday, Zomato closed with some phenomenal oversubscription. So I think today, as we speak and we deal with so many startups across different stages, besides, while a unicorn is a desired level or a vision, but we also seeing a lot of vision and ambition going towards actually reaching the market first, as in picking up, listing and going the IPO way, right? In that context, with the unicorn context, it gives me immense happiness to actually share with you that there are many unicorns, but the first unicorn which came in from the academia incubator, which is attached to the incubator ecosystem, the academia ecosystem, is Gupshup. And I think Gupshup was incubated at SINE, IIT Bombay way back in 2004-05. Pony is the key founding member there. So if there's time, maybe she can share with us how they really moved on, and they are one of the unicorns. So it gives, the reason we are talking about all this, friends from the audience, is that we are in a golden period, right? We are in a golden era, and you can't get a better time than what we are seeing today. So let's keep that positive thought in mind and, take the discussion along. So this whole discussion of startup ecosystem, et cetera, is just a journey from a story of innovation to going to the market. So I'll just spend a few seconds on innovation. So when we say innovation, it's not just restricted to the technology. While we talk about, I come purely from a technology business incubator background, but it's not restricted to only the technology part, but it also is, applicable to ideas and innovations coming out, germinating from labs, from research institutes. Not only that, but even from students at different, levels of education, from say grassroots level to higher education institutions, even corporate employees. Today, even we see a lot of corporates encouraging their employees, in looking at innovation, process of improvement. I remember way back 2 decades ago when I was in the banking sector, we had this initiative where the management, it was a strategic decision where the management had actually said that we have this suggestion box, an idea box. I'm talking of 2 decades ago. It's not right now. So anybody who has a anybody who has a suggestion or a scope, an input in terms of how we can serve our customer better, how we can process information better, how we can improve the customer experience better, please drop in your suggestion in this email, right? Those days we had an email, right? And we had a team very closely working with the CEO, looking at each of it. So innovation as a culture was something which was across the organization. So even a corporate employee today is looking at innovation. We're even looking at businesses, right? So we're talking of already the standard small and business units which are already there, family businesses which are already there. Even these owners are looking at how can they do things better, how can they serve their customers, how can they be cheaper, better, and faster. So innovation to a marketplace is a journey, And startup ecosystem actually facilitates this whole journey, from this stage to the market. So like Deric said, yes, we are in a very beautiful state of affairs. As we say, the golden era for India. We are third next to the big giants when you talk about startup ecosystem. And this is something, it's a very dated information. I think it's a 2019. I think today we've already crossed 24 plus in the half year scenario. So so giving that context, it's important to really, because we may have some of the audiences who are like fairly new to this whole concept. So just bringing getting people on the level board. So when you're talking about startup ecosystem, each and every stakeholders today are looking at largely contributing to three important factors. By helping innovators get into a startup mode, which typically has a tremendous economic growth, which when we talk about economic growth, we are talking about creating employment opportunities, improving the per capita income. So we've seen series of policymakers. We've seen Government of India announcing so many, policy interventions and new measures to ensure startups are accommodated. And startups get a favorable, conducive environment to really work with. Looking at social impact, we're talking of employment opportunity, which is the key, because there's always a bigger challenge that India has, considering its size and demography and the strategic value. So each and every stakeholder which we talk about in the startup ecosystem are enabling the innovators get towards these end game. The end objective, or I would say the vision which all of us are driving towards. So when we look at it, startup ecosystem, the heart is an incubator. So according to me, when I got into this system, when I got into this ecosystem, I felt incubator is like a real incubator when a baby is born, premature baby is born, right? And what happens? The baby requires that kind of a environment where the baby is able to develop its health conditions so that it's fit to go out and face the real world and live in the real world. Likewise, incubator exactly does that. We have beautiful innovators coming out with some very good ideas. They need to have a very conducive warm environment so that they really are able to, build up their strength, their physical, mental, and all the vital stats to really go and work in the business world. So when we talk about incubator, it is not that incubator works in silo. Incubator works in synergy with various other stakeholders, which are both internal and external. So I'll start with academia, because today, if you see, academia contributes biggest in a big way to the startup ecosystem. So if you look at academia like an IIT Bombay or any institute, you will find that within the institution, like we have the DS School of Entrepreneurship, they're doing some tremendous work in actually building the culture within the campus. Likewise, there are various departments. I'm not showing that slide, but you will realize that each and every factor in the academia really contributes in the building of the culture. So academia has a very key role. Then we have investors, industry experts, mentors. Today, like people like Deric and Deeksha and Poini and Aparna and so many others, right, are giving their selfless time and energy to really make this happen. That requires a different form of a Kida to really work in us. So we are finding, we've spent quite a lot of time in this whole system, and we've seen this system, the ecosystem has evolved. Now we have more givers. So that's playing a real important role in helping incubators, in turn, help the innovators. Then we're talking of manufacturers, service providers, designers. All of them are looking at startups saying that, all right, can we start with some, basic subsidy way of working? Can we give some free credits on certain softwares and licenses? So we ensure the startups are able to kickstart their journey. So we have startup associations, international forums, organizations are looking at Indian ecosystem in a big way. We have not only just the university and academia, but we also have very good corporates looking at India in a favorable way, startup ecosystem in a favorable way. So I think you can't have a better times than what we are seeing today. So like I told you, the role of the incubators and accelerators hence are very important. So all those people who are in the audience today who are really keen on looking at it, who are either planning to get into this journey or already into it, I think it's extremely important to looking at, attaching yourself to any incubators and accelerators which are already there. So simply because there's one reason where you must have heard a lot of many of the speakers talking of fail fast, minimize your risk. Resources are limited for startups, right? So you really are in a very different environment where you have, and it's a learning process. So when you know that there are safe havens where you can actually try out and still ensure that it's minimal, it doesn't assure you 100% success, but at least you're in a place where you're able to rectify and come out and build in a resilience as you move along, right? So incubators and accelerators have played a critical role in, if startup ecosystem doing well today, if people like Deric are saying unicorns are the way to go, we are looking at great IPOs happening. These are the people who really have a very critical role today and going forward. So when you say incubators and accelerators, it could either be from a corporate. So today corporates are actually looking at working, either having their own incubators or co-incubating with incubators. They're looking at co-innovations and co-creations. We have a lot of independent accelerators and incubators who are very active. Deeksha might, can share a few insights from this side. So we also have very, very, very large investors and, venture capitals also developing their, accelerators and incubators, so to say. Academia, I just explained. Government is playing a critical role today. So I would urge people to look up to the Startup India policy. Also look at the state government policy. We are in Mumbai, and look at the Maharashtra state government startup policy. As incubators, we have an opportunity to work with some of these teams in various governments. We can only assure you that they are also trying their best to ensure the startups get what it requires to get them to go. So I think the startups in the audience today are really need to find out where they can fit in best. It is a combination of so many factors. Please pick up one such area where you think you can get that incubation access or accelerator access and make use of that, right? So typically as a lifestyle of a startup, we all know it, but just for simplicity's sake, as an incubator, we see that following in these cycles where you're talking validation, it moves to the next stage of alpha. You call it anything, MVP, prototype, we just calling it alpha. Then you move to the next stage of customer validation and acceleration. Now, on each stage, so if you take the first stage where you're talking of a problem solution, but this is a very critical factor to start with, the first two stage. And this is where the incubators play a very critical role. So if you hear a lot of researchers or read a lot of researchers saying the mortality rate is very high, but we can certainly say in incubator, we try and make an attempt to reduce that. We don't say that we have reduced it, but we are in a position to help the startup pivot and come out of that issue and look at some other opportunities. There are many such stories which SINE has witnessed, especially during the pandemic. I really would want Poini to, step in here if you think you want to, or maybe at the end of the session, because we have very interesting stories of how incubators have helped, startups pivot, come out of situations and look at a problem solution fit. Likewise, the minimum viable product. So ultimately, if there is no customer, what are we talking about? So the whole approach is very customer centric, alongside building various other factors. When you look at startup, obviously, once you've decided looked at the problem solution fit, how do you reach the product market fit? That's another story in itself. And likewise, scale and business creation. So typically today, when you look at challenges faced by startup, it is a whole lot of things. It's both internal, it is external, internal to the startup, external to the startup. And according to me, whatever little I have seen of this ecosystem, I think the whole journey of transformation from an innovator to an entrepreneur mindset. And this is something which is very, it's like peeling off your skin, like we are all born with some basic, skills, attitudes, aptitudes. We're all different. But, so we might be a core researcher, very good in our technology, and we would like walk, talk, and, think about our technology. And when we find that sweet spot saying, yes, there is an opportunity to look at the market, we have to get into that entrepreneur mindset. So this whole journey is very challenging. And that is where the innovator, the incubators, the accelerators, the entire ecosystem helps the innovator change into that mindset. There are times they help them change, or they give them solutions, or they also give them various options of how to deal with this challenge. So if you look at various studies, we are aware that, you all must be aware that typical top 3 or 4 challenges is like the product market fit, which the startup faces, money, which is a big challenge, which used to be a big challenge, but we believe it is not. We will take it as we move along, and obviously the team. So I'll not be spending much time on this. I think Aparna has planned some specific sessions for each of it. But somewhere as you embark into the journey of startup, it's extremely important to be aware and informed about this and not get stressed, but then you realize you're in a golden era and there are answers to it. So therefore, the journey is not a plain journey, but there are a lot of emotions and ups and downs. That's the reality. But then the startup ecosystem is there to ensure that you're able to, straddle along safely. Yeah, so this is on Incubator, Deric.
Awesome. I think a couple of things I would like to add. I mean, there's great. I mean, one of the points that you touched upon was awesome on the pivoting thing, right? How flexible a startup can be during crisis shows the resilience in them, right? I still remember 2004, 2005, I was doing a course in IIT Bombay on encryption and cryptography, a CDEEP program. And those days, because you talked about Gupshup, right? And it's the first unicorn, it started with Weberu. The name was Weberu in 2005. I used to visit them, talk to the founders. And then 15 years journey, I was tracking them, how many times they've pivoted, just like, Free Charge, Zomato, how they started, and they completely changed the model of delivery to, hotel reviews and everything. So how you got to be in the game every single day, right? To make things happen. If that is the attitude, you will finish the race. And the other thing is another IIT Bombay startup, Anurag Kashyap. I'm saying
Kashyap Devra.
Devra, right. Kashyap Devra, right? Queenie, thanks. He started Jungly.com. He sold to Amazon in 99.
No. That is Rakesh Mathur.
Rakesh Mathur, and because Anurag Kashyap Devra, I was in that book launch of his Golden Tap, right?
Right.
2015, when he talked about his startup being sold to Amazon for 250 million, 1998. That was amazing, right? For the ecosystem, everybody was so pumped up. And then after that, he sold 2 more startups, and now he's at Hypertrack, completely funded now in 2017. What a journey! And then along the way, so many success stories of women entrepreneurs also. Coming to the product market fitment and the founding team, to touch upon some of the maybe the women entrepreneurs journey. Puni ma'am, anything you want to add on if you have any advice to people listening, especially women entrepreneurs? You've been through a journey. You've been building a complete ecosystem. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah, sure, Derek. So a couple of things, and I'm not going basically, on my input is not really necessarily targeted to any gender. It's a general. So entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs. We have a challenge of not too many entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs in the country. That's a separate issue. But for each of them, except for certain societal context, most challenges are common, be it a male entrepreneur or female entrepreneur. Yeah. Now, a few things, and there was a good amount of discussion on unicorn here. Yeah. And we had Gupshup. Like, honestly, I don't think Gupshup started its company basically because they wanted to become a unicorn. Yeah. Target was not there. Unicorn happens. I think you take fund not for the valuation, but you take fund to build the value out of your product venture for your potential customer. So take money to build the product, take money to create a growth roadmap, take money to basically reach out external boundaries beyond India and all those things, enhance your customer at every stage. Yeah. Become successful in customer acquisition, revenue growth, and automatically valuation will follow. So my thing is that, like, don't chase money for the valuation, chase money for value creation for your customers. Yeah, that is one thing that I would like to uh, talk about it. Second thing is that, yes, pivot. So pivot has couple of context here. First thing is that you start with something which is very very early on in your journey, where, like, what you see, the first bullet in second box here, product market fit. So you start a journey which you feel that it has worked with you in your lab or academic project, or maybe somewhere else in other geographies, and, like, I'm also going to start it. But you are not actually touching this with your potential user or market, whether there is a need or not, right? Lots of me too startup have gone by, because there was, like, in the US they made a big, and then clone was started in India, and then it didn't go anywhere. Yeah. So the one is that when you don't have product market fit early on, like, and the entrepreneurs are smart, they immediately pivot. So one case of pivoting could be because of that thing. Second case of pivoting could be because market is genuinely very difficult, and then when there is a genuine like, problem of reaching and acquiring the customer, entrepreneurs don't want to give up, and they may want to tweak their product, either as a product or business process or whatever. Yeah. Third case is also a timing, that you start in certain era, and this is a very critical case. The very important thing, you start in certain era. Now your product or solution doesn't make relevant in the changing timing, and how do you pivot to this? And I have a couple of examples I can give you this right inside. So Gupshup is a right story there, right? They started basically, just for the participants here, we are talking about Gupshup, or company's name is Webro, but brand name is Gupshup. They were actually, when they started in early 2000s, right? Early or mid 2000, Wi-Fi was not really norm. Imagine how the things have changed in last 15 years. But Wi-Fi, we were still on wired network, Ethernet network, and Gupshup wanted to basically make, working on caching technology, make internet available when you don't have access to like Wi-Fi. Yeah, that was their thing, and within 2 years, like, Wi-Fi became the norm. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that is, yeah. And then they pivoted, so timing was a different thing, right?
Correct.
We have idea for another class, like, poster boy from SINE, like, very very, and also, like, very proud worthy company that India has ever produced. It was a defense drone. Ministry of Defense has given them like $120 million. They are the only first company who have actually competed with Israel and UK kind of company, defeated them, and taken this order, and then, like, walk away with this kind of orders, right? Now this company started with, like, in olden days we didn't have a smartphone again, like, new generation wouldn't realize we had that, like, button phones, right?
Yeah.
Now
Nokia.
small Nokia, you can fit it in pocket, like.
Yeah.
Now they were actually working on a mechanical charging device for those kind of phones, especially for rural segment, because charging was not, in fact, in rural segment, pan wala shop and grocery shop had a business model for letting people charge from their outlet and make money. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So these guys were making mechanical crankers. So 1 minute of cranking will give them 3 or 4 minutes talk time. Yeah,
Wow.
that was the thing. Soon they realized smartphone is coming up. And, like, this was not, and they had made business worth 40-50 lakhs. That was not the case. They really didn't do that.
Amazing.
But they foresaw it so well that future is not in that. The team is extremely competent, and there is a R&D. CTO is a really electronics, geek out there. Ashish, I don't know whether he was your contemporary or not, but then he was working with a faculty in aerospace engineering department to help them build robots and drones and all those things. And out there they competed in a aero show. They defeated MIT company, team, and their drone came first. And that's where they built up their first confidence that I want to go. That is how the pivot has happened. Yeah. So timing is very, very critical out here. So this is a pivot story. I have dime a dozen. I don't think in, for the want of time, I'll limit it here. But my bottom line is that don't look at fundraising for valuation, look at fundraising for value creation out of your startup. And I'll stop here.
Amazing. Ma'am, words of wisdom. Build value, valuation will follow. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I just want to touch upon, take the conversation ahead with the funding ecosystem a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Probably, Ganga ma'am, you can touch upon your thoughts on how's the funding scenario in the social entrepreneurship space, or funding of a private company. What are the initiatives being done by WiE? Maybe probably you can touch upon a couple of things on the funding space as well.
Sure. Thanks. Oh, I can't have a better session when I'm going to be, when I have people like Deric and WiE speaking. Great. So just one second. I try to move my slide. So again, I stick to the topic. Yeah. So just to set up, before I go to the funding, I think what you heard from WiE is exactly sound bites and lessons you get from an incubator or an accelerator. And typically, just if there are people who try to, who are wondering what exactly happens, there's an attempt to put a pictorial representation and some pointers in terms of what really goes through in the process of incubation or acceleration. So the journey can be anywhere up to 18 months to 3 years. It depends because incubators and accelerators cater to different sectors. So the requirements are very different. But the point to be noted is that they actually help the startup at every stage. So the stories which WiE just now talked about, Idea Forge, or I think there's also many more, and I also can relate to Attenberg. Now, these are all, students who were studying and actually were tinkering alongside their education, and they had immense opportunity to explore. So when you talk about the story of pivoting comes much later, but that, the excitement of wanting to solve a problem, make things relevant, work on your passion, which is, so close to your heart. All of that is, something which an accelerator or an incubator helps. So we typically look at stage from the proof of concept stage to the scale stage. After that, you have all the VCs and the biggies coming into the life of the startup. But the initial baby steps is something which an incubator offers. So along with what exactly happens? You get office space, access to labs, you have co-working space. So it's virtually like a simulated business environment. You get access to networks, we just discussed about mentors, experts, bankers, manufacturers, industries. You have a lot of visibility. So we actually, in our incubation and various other accelerators, we actually help coach the startup to present, because today it's all about the elevator pitch in 2 minutes. How are you going to, put your message across? How many eyeballs on you? So all of these also things which are coached and helped at the incubator accelerator stage. We give access to the advisory. So when we talk about incubate and accelerate, one thing we're very clear is we really work with people who are damn serious about their business or about their idea. So it's not just like people just breeze in and breeze out. So the selection process, onboarding is very rigorous. We want the skin in the game. We are very clear that they have to, suppose we are a technology business incubator, so the domain knowledge is important. We also insist and ensure that the co-founding team has the right complementary skill sets. There is a equally deep understanding or experience coming out from a business commercial perspective. So all of this is something which we are very critical, because the startup ecosystem is a selfless team, right? So we also expect that from the other side. So in the same the scope of things, we also have some very wonderful service providers who give very genuine and support to the startups by way of the legal, the IP rights, the financial needs, so many things. And we also conduct extensive mentoring, boot camps, coaching, and this is one such attempt where we collaborate with various centers and we try to, give out there's enough information in the internet, right? If you Google and find out, you'll find enough dime a dozen. But the insights which you get from an incubator is something very specific to that particular segment. And last but not the least is the funding support, because ultimately money is something which is required. So that's where I'm going to spend a little bit of time. So when you look at, money, what we're trying to say is, one sec. Yeah, so I don't know if you can see the first one. So we start off. So I've just kind of pictorially tried to represent which are the sources of money and what kind of monies are available. To start with, incubators like ours, where we are actively supported by various government agencies and corporates. We also, give money as they land into the incubation. So we have incubators and accelerators giving some, a notional funding support. Obviously, friends and families, but to start with, maybe they come in a little later, because the first set of investors you need to convince, the first set of people whom you need to really convince is your friends and family, not just for money, but for the fact that you're going to get into a new journey. Here, I'd like to spend a few seconds, because we've seen in the past, so probably people, not of the current generation, but people like, say, Aparna, Poini, and a few of us, we've seen that, when we joined the corporate, thinking that, this is the only way to go. And those days when people would, the kind of people who we would see getting into business and startup would be typically coming from business families or, communities, those kind of things, right? But as we look at it, cut to now, we see a completely different change. We are seeing all first generation entrepreneurs, people coming from service backgrounds, people have highly qualified exposures. Probably they they actually give up their fantastic pay packets in the corporates to spend time in the startup world. So that's a big change. And there we need the buy-in of the friends and families, not from just money perspective, but also mind share. So of course, just coming back to the money part of it. So you have fellowship grant, wherein, there are innovators who just kind of made up their mind, they're damn serious about it. And there's this, fellowship grant where there's some nominal monies to really help them sustain while they have lab access facilities, etc. Stipend of 30,000, 25,000 a month to really help them sustain is given. That's the first step. Then they have access to prize money. So like Poini was talking about, Idea Forge, they made a lot of they earned their buck, they earned their survival, funds by participating extensively in B-Plan competition, challenge, and hackathons. So that's one source of getting money. You get a lot of project funding. Suppose you're attached to good research labs, so you do get that funding through the institution. We also find a lot of jumpstart funding coming in from various private sources as well. Government is playing a very critical role, like I told you before. It's not only the grants. When a government is giving grants, and the beauty is they are giving grants from the ideation stage. So it's extremely important you identify your incubator and accelerator in such a way that they do have support coming in this form. And today, grants is something which is where you're committed to deliver the milestone, but you don't have to repay. But obviously, when you have to avail of the grants, there are a lot of checks and balances and evaluation which happens. But this is something which is the lowest hanging fruit for a startup today. Government is extensively supporting, through subsidies. So when, the pandemic happened, when they were encouraged the startups to sell their, products and solutions at certain rates, there were huge subsidies which were available for the startup. So government, we are seeing is policymakers have a huge mindset change, and that's the beauty of the game. And we have CSR money coming in. So today, the CSR Act, allows certain business incubators to really, use these funds for the other incubation activities, including startups. And a lot of CSR are seeing this as a strategic alignment, not only a strategic alignment in terms of not only ensuring CSR monies are put to use in the proper way, but also getting an opportunity to look at some very solid R&D happening from the ground, where they can see technology alliances, they can see market alliance and various strategic alliances. So we're seeing this coming up in a big way. And the funding from CSR could be grants. They're also looking at small seed supports. Government also has started giving seed support, funding to startups, and see it as something which happens at a later stage of a life cycle of a startup, and where you actually have found the market problem. You have kind of found the product solution, product market fit, and the MVP is ready, and now you need to really accelerate. You have seed funding coming in. Likewise, you have the angel investors, venture capital, private equity. I mean, that's where we have people like Deric who are like solidly there to give us more information. They look at supporting startups through equity, quasi-equity, convertible debts. So today the startups have options. The founder has a question, there is an answer. The founder says, look, I'm not very sure about valuation. There is an answer, there's a solution or a measure which says, hey, why don't you look at instruments which are not pure equity? And if there is a need, a dire need where the valuation is, when they're seeing a good valuation coming in, there's a short-term need, there's a bridge finance coming in today. So personal loans, I mean, this is a very interesting thing. Well, I researched, I mean, I realized it when we were talking to a startup. So you have some very renowned NBFCs like Bajaj Finance, L&T Finance. I'm not trying to sell them, but I'm saying the very well-known recognized NBFCs today, they give loans to professionals. So typically we are seeing in the healthcare segment, a lot of doctors getting into the business, becoming an entrepreneurs. The health tech story is filled with that, right? You have these NBFCs proactively supporting these professionals, saying that we'll give you, if you're a professional, and obviously they have some terms, you're getting some short-term money at reasonable rates of, interest. We have chartered accountants. So there are loans given to professionals through these NBFCs. That's an option you can look at. So there's so many options for a startup today, right? And then we're looking at banks in a big way. Of course, there is always a discussion and debate in terms of banks don't support an early stage for various reasons, because they are in a regulated market. But certainly they are also, the policymakers of the banks are also talking to us extensively, saying how can they make it user-friendly from a startup perspective. Paid pilots is a very solid way. When we're talking of paid pilot, we have the industry or the market, the company, the corporate willing to invest. So we had recently we had a collaboration with a very large corporate where they opened the manufacturing process. They gave access to the startup to the manufacturing process to go and test their product, and they also assured them that they will at least make good the costs incurred in that pilot. So what more validation one needs? Customer advances is the solid way to ensure. I think it's the best way to get that kind of a testimony saying you are doing the right thing and you are having the right product market fit. So that is something which, is one source of funding which you could look at eventually. We're seeing a huge amount of interest in the HNIs, ultra high net worth individuals. And this is not just restricted to urban cities. I can tell you, my friends, today we have tier 2, tier 3 large, small amount of monies in bulk, in groups coming and, helping startups. We have some very rich farmers. We have some good landlords who are willing to look. See, finally, they're looking at where can they invest, right? They have the traditional way of investment, but they're looking at startups as a new scope of a new opportunity to look at. So there's money available, and we are really, now the story of startup ecosystem is no longer restricted to cities and urban markets. It is much more. It has gone into hinterlands also, right? So that's where you have a huge opportunity. Public-private program, we are seeing beautiful synergies coming from government agencies like Department of Science Technologies, very well-known corporates joining hands with incubators, and we are able to see how we can synergistically ensure the startups gain and the fund of funds. So what I'm trying to tell you, my friends, is when you talk about funding, there's enough, and this is just indicative. There may be more points, or there may be more options. Probably going forward, we'll have Deeksha or even Deric speak, or even Pony, she's there here. So you have to understand that this is the platter which is available when we talk about funding. And of course, these are some detailing. I'm not going to spend time on this. We've just attempted to say where all are the funds, what quantum of funds. So these keep changing, but then I think it's a good input to really, see the, type of funding available for what and which kind of sectors, what stage of the company, These are things, which is there. And this is very restricted to only probably a little bit of technology, but likewise your social entrepreneurship or probably your agri-tech. Of course, agri-tech still falls under this, but various other sectors also have similar such funding opportunities, right? So the government, I'm just giving this as an important slide. So when we talk about incubators, Atal is playing a very important role. They have tinkering labs and incubation centers. I request all of you, if you're in locations beyond, where you don't have access to good incubators or accelerators, do look at these formats as well. They're quite, very, very helpful for startups. Startup India is something which is, which keeps coming in the news for various reasons. Look at the kind of measures they have introduced for startups. You're talking of income tax exemptions, IP protections, easy public procurement. Typically means today, if you look at defense procurement and defense, most of the government procurements happens through tendering, right? So you will find some of these government departments actually having in one of the terms, some of the terms and conditions of the tendering, which kind of suggests that look at startups as an option, right? So it's even encouraging. So startups have got even the visibility from such departments. And Poini spoke about Idea Forge, how they were the first ones to get into this business. The GEM portal is another very classic example where you can actually, startups can go showcase their products and services there and get access to the government as a purchaser. And of course, MHRD's Innovation Cell has so many incubation centers. Sorry?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Poini ma'am. Yeah. So I'm also at the end of the my part of the information I would like to share. These are some of the inputs, links you may like to look at going forward. This is a story of SINE. You can get more updated numbers. So this is how an incubators really kind of look at their performance matrices. And thank you for this opportunity. In case people are interested, we have an incubation manager who will be more than happy to address your queries. Thank you so much.
Oh, Ganga ma'am, thank you so much. There's wealth of knowledge there, a lot of information. Really, really thank you. Valuable time spent, I think the kind of ecosystem that is being created now, to Poini ma'am's point also, the timing is so correct, if you see, and the validation is also there in the last few months during COVID time, the number of unicorns that have been created in India, valued at, $1 billion, has been amazing. That's also a validation that the market is ready, right? So all about jumping in and making things happen. Talking about making things happen, talking about entrepreneurship, we have a successful, very successful entrepreneur here, Deeksha Ahuja. Let me introduce her. She's been patiently waiting and listening to us.
It's absolutely been a pleasure, Deric, to listen to Ganga, Poini ma'am, and of course you as well. So it's all my pleasure.
Our pleasure is always ours too. Let me introduce her. The very, very interesting journey Deeksha has for the last 1 decade. She's been a serial entrepreneur for the past more than a decade. Started her first venture in the edtech space back in 2012, and she's been in this ecosystem mentoring a lot of startups, and women entrepreneurs specifically. And she spent last 6 years figuring out how to make the startup ecosystem more inclusive for female entrepreneurs and founders, right? So, and that thought led her to launch Encubay, a global diversity-focused network to have a level playing field for women founders. And she recently launched Encubay Angel Network, which is a first angel network by women for women in the country. And so excited to see, if you see her LinkedIn profile, that also echoes with my philosophy of, can you really enjoy other people's success? Deeksha, that's so amazing. Tell us, I just want to ask you a question. Tell us your journey, how it's been when you started off 2011. Not even a single unicorn was being echoed in Indian ecosystem. What was your starting point, and how do you see this space, specifically in a sector where success is not guaranteed? How do you really stay in the game? Your thoughts. Over to you, Deeksha.
No, thanks, Deric. And of course, thanks to Aparna and everyone here for giving me this opportunity. You're absolutely right. Back in 2011, 2012, I went to St. Xavier's in Bombay. So I relate very much with all the IITB alums here. But back then, entrepreneurship was not trending, right? Or what it is now. And out of a class of 60 in my batch, I think I was the only one who took the plunge to become an entrepreneur. And that was, primarily because of the fact that as a person, I've always been very driven to impact. And taking up a, great cushiony, fancy job or going for your master's outside of the country just didn't seem to, kind of put that in perspective for me, right? So I think that's how the entrepreneurship bug kind of hit me. And I've always been one to take challenges because I feel like you have to be out of your comfort zone to do truly magnificent things. And that's how the journey started. Luckily enough for me, I come from a very broad-minded family, and my parents had no distinction between me and my brother, right? It was always about, like I think Poini ma'am said, right? Entrepreneurship is gender agnostic. It has nothing to do with you being a man or a woman. But when I actually looked out in the ecosystem, even small things like Deric, I couldn't even count, I could count the number of female entrepreneurs back in 2011 on my fingers because they were so rare, right? So there was a complete lack of role models, right? And when I was starting out in the edtech space, when the term was not even coined, now, of course, it's probably one of the most invested in sectors. But, back in 2011, 2012, people was like, what is this? Does education even need innovation? So, literally, from convincing people that yes, education does require innovation to creating a model, a sustainable business model ground up from scratch, actually taught me a lot of things, right? And as an entrepreneur, one of the biggest mistakes that we end up making is we work in silos. We don't actually go out there and see what's happening in other sectors, what's happening in other industries, what are other entrepreneurs doing, because it's very important to get that temp check, right? And I think that innate need in me to go out and get validation, figure out what everyone's doing, got me to attend a lot of your networking forums, networking events, right? And again, I saw a similar trajectory there in terms of lack of women. I'm talking about 2013 to 2015, 16, most of these events and forums and across the country, right? I'm based out of Pune, but, I would attend events across the country. There were hardly any women, right? And that's what, kind of got me thinking that, why do we not see more women founders in this ecosystem? And what can we do to kind of, maybe make it more inclusive for them, right? Because, on a more practical note, the reason I personally so strongly believe in diversity is because there's enough data to prove that diverse companies have almost a 35% higher ROI. Productivity is much higher. And of course, innovation will be a lot more when you have different perspectives, and different people coming and putting how they see the world, right? So even from a practical sense, it made sense, but why was it not being reflected in our ecosystem and even globally, right? So Deric, that's how the journey started. As an entrepreneur, some of the most deep problems that you face, you kind of tend to solve that, right? So 6 years back, my problem was that I didn't find a like-minded ecosystem of women around me, and that's what led me to kind of say, hey, my edtech venture was slowly growing, and we had a team there, and I was like, okay, now I want to solve for this problem, right? So that in the next couple of years, the challenges or the lack of women that I saw as an entrepreneur, I didn't want my predecessors to face, right? So that's kind of how it started 6 years back. I spent about, good 2 to 3 years, of course, mentoring a lot of startups, speaking to a lot of women across the country, speaking to a lot of investors, ecosystem partners. And I kind of, discovered 3 things that, were very, very, you can say specific to, women founders in our country, right? And I'm going to kind of just give everyone an overview here, but this is in no way to discourage everyone. It's our job to, decode and tell people what we see so that we can make the situation better, right? So the first thing, Deric, that I realized was that a lot of women founders were, even though they had brilliant ideas and, they were actually hitting the nail on the head, they didn't have as large visions as some of their male counterparts, right? To actually say, hey, if I can serve 50 customers in my local neighborhood, could I actually serve 5 million customers, right, across the country, right? So that was somewhere a very, very big challenge. And I'm not saying that this is wrong or right, but that was just an observation, right? The second thing was about money, right? I think Ganga spoke very well about funding. And, there's a very interesting, or rather an important stat that I want to bring out. Most women founders and entrepreneurs, the first time they're actually even, pitching to an investor is the first time that they're meeting him, right? Vis-a-vis any other, male counterpart who's probably had an idea and spoken to 5 investors and VCs and said, hey, what do you think about this? Would you like to put your money, right? So when women build companies, because we are so inclined towards building sustainably, we're very frugal in our approach. We don't really consider the option of, figuring out that, okay, I can actually go out, raise money for this venture. And of course, adding more money will help me grow my venture, right? So that was the second observation. And of course, the third one, which is, I think, the most relevant, was that women lacked access to a lot of networks, Deric, networks of experts, mentors, corporates, organizations like these, peer communities. And, when you're starting off small, it's actually your network that helps you propel your growth, right? And in an absence of that, go-to network, you're at a very big disadvantage from, most of your other counterparts or entrepreneurs, right? So I think these were, some of the key findings in my journey, but I completely agree with the point that I think Ganga and Poini ma'am made about timing. See, timing is everything, right? It took 16 years for Paytm to happen 5 years back, and today they're, kind of filing for their IPO, right? So timing is clearly one of the most important factors, when you're launching your venture. So I realized that, I had discovered these issues that, were based in our ecosystem for women, but I didn't think the timing was right to actually do something about this, right? Fast forward to last year, 2020, it's been monumental, I think, for everyone in the world in good and bad ways. But I think for women, it really was a positive incremental change, because now work from home became a norm. You no longer had to, go to a certain place, right? And women have different roles to assume, and so do men, right? But, work from home was real now. And secondly, look at the session today, right? You are plugged in from, another place. I am plugged in. Everyone's plugged in. We don't need to, physically meet. The internet gives us that digital acceleration to be present and be part of these discussions, right? So that's how I said that, okay, 2020 is the year for a lot of change. And, it seems like all the things and the timing and the trends kind of fit into picture. And that's when I just, decided to launch Encubay with the intention of really creating a global diversity focused network to level the playing field for a lot of women founders, right? And of course, I'll come a little later to what we do at Encubay, but that was just a little bit of the journey, Deric, to give you perspective about some of my learnings.
Awesome, Deeksha. I think one specific thing I completely echo with what you're saying is, every overnight success is a 10-year story. People don't see what all ups and downs they went through. But at the end of the day, you get what you settle for, right, in life. And moving on, really curious to know your journey after 2020, right, when you started the Angel Network specifically for female founders. What do you think? I also agree, these 3 words of, hard work, smart work, and network. And specifically when there are a lot of networks coming, funding platforms coming in, Shark Tank India being launched, the timing is why they're coming at this time, that also validates the timing, horse stable kind of events coming in. So I think that the entire ecosystem, the market being ready, timing is perfect. How do you see in this timing for female founders to leverage these kind of funding platform? Be it syndicate network or institutional VCs, corporate VCs getting really active. your take maybe, what do you think is the right platform to probably make your term sheet?
Sure.
And yeah, over to you. What's your advice to everybody listening?
So first of all, I do want to say, sorry, there's a little bit of an echo. Can you hear me now?
Let me go on mute.
Yeah.
Yes.
So first of all, I do want to say that this is a very, very opportune time. I mean, for entrepreneurs at a whole, but definitely for female entrepreneurs. 10 years back, things were not as looking upward as they are now, right? So definitely always make hay when the sun shines, right? So that's one. What I want to kind of do is just touch upon certain things that I think every female founder should know before actually taking on that part of getting funded or starting their fundraising journey, right? And I want to decode that here, right? So first of all, you need to realize that not every business is an VC or an angel investable business, right? And let me kind of break that down for you, right? Just the way the funding ecosystem works, right? Like Ganga has, very well put across and spoken about, government grants and fellowships and stuff like that. A lot of my work has to do with the entire VC and angel ecosystem, right? Now, they are also in business, right? This money that they are investing in startups, they actually have to give it back to their own investors, right? So that's the first thing. It's not money that they own that they're putting in. Angels do that, yes, but they do it because they are expecting that good return on their investment, right? So you need to understand that as a business, if you don't have a business model that can actually exponentially rise in revenues or growth, it's probably not VC investable, right? And what that means is that with you growing, with you picking up scale, if the cost of you acquiring a customer, or cost of you manufacturing a good, or cost of you selling something does not go down, it's probably not VC investable, right? That's simple economics and maths, right? So that's the first thing. You need to figure whether or not your business is VC investable. And again, there's nothing wrong or right about it. There are a lot of other ways to consider funding if your business does not fit into this investable bucket. But going to now, suppose you figured out, yes, my business is tech focused, my business is scalable, sustainable, and it kind of does fit into that matrix for an angel or a VC to put in money. What do I do next, right? So first thing is about frequency, right? Fundraising as a process is probably one of the toughest and longest journeys, Deric, and I'm sure you kind of agree with me, right? And if you're someone who's raising your round for the first or time, you want to give it 6 to 8 months, right? Because it's not like the first or the second investor you're going to meet, you're going to, get a yes, right? You have to kind of go on. You need to learn from what feedback they are giving. Sorry, Deric, you want to add something?
I just couldn't hold myself. I mean, I just want to share that. I just want to say that, funding process, it's a full-time job, actually. It takes almost a year to raise the first round, specifically when there is pre-revenue, right? Nobody knows what is the valuation, how much should I raise. There's so much confusion. Even for bigger known brand lineage. I mean, I'm mentoring a startup called Seeple in IIT Bombay. For the last 1.5 years, we tried raising pre-revenue. It took us 18 months to raise. Just closed a pre-series A with a $1.3 million valuation, but it took us 18 months, and then Kanchan has been asking a question. Thank you, Kanchan. What are some of the good things that has happened to women entrepreneurs? I want to share. To add to your point, Deeksha, right? To the funding thing, one of the women entrepreneur startup which I'm mentoring is Bikes 24/7. They're based in Pune, actually, and how do they differentiate themselves? It's only execution game, right? I mean, because how do you show traction to a newly just a small revenue started company to an investor saying this is a workable idea, there is acceptance, and then probably there is a possibility of reducing the time of that funding cycle. So you got to weigh it's again at the end of the day negotiation on so many parameters, but at the end of the day you have an upper hand as a founder. You should be ready to walk away and than giving 30% of your company in the first round, right? That's where you see where the wind is blowing. Yeah, Deeksha. Over to you.
Thanks, Kanchan, for bringing that point. I can probably, speak a lot on this, but I think one of the things that I want to highlight is women, when they start businesses, impact is a default part of their business, which is so beautiful to see. Whether even if you're running a for-profit venture, they always have a very, very strong impact story, right? And I think that is so futuristic, right? Everyone was talking about the term unicorn, right? But I feel in this decade, we're going to revisit that term, because you cannot value a company only based on the revenue that they make, right? What about other things like the social impact, the environmental impact, the gender impact, right? I think these things now, and even in the entire VC world, there's a term called ESG, right? Where now people or funds want to put money where they can see all this impact come true, right? And Kanchan, I think women have an upper hand there in whatever that they do. Like, I mean, I've spoken to, I speak to at least 25 to 30 women on a weekly basis who are, either looking to scale, either looking to raise funds from us. And I think impact is such a strong theme across, right? So, and also, like, just want to mention one of the sectors that we are seeing women make a lot of wave is in the entire sustainability sector, right? Which is very, very, very novel in the country right now. Honestly, even VCs don't understand this space, unfortunately. But there are, some amazing companies in this space that are innovating, creating zero waste solution, creating, plastic-free solutions, alternate food solutions, and women are leading that wave. Right. So it's, if anyone says that, women are not at the forefront of tech and SaaS, but I think women are on the front of what our planet needs to survive. Right. So I think that is something we all really, really need to be proud of, Kanchan.
Awesome. I think great discussion. Till now, I think we are running out of time, I guess, but I wish we had more time. Moving on to maybe any questions from the audience, or maybe any specific questions if you have, Priya, from the chat, if you want to ask us, or maybe I can bring in Aparna ma'am if you have any specific question or anything, any comments you want to add.
Yeah, I think, Deric, you have taken up more or less all the questions which were there in the chat. So I guess we can have Aparna ma'am if she has anything to say. And in the meantime, I'll see if more questions come.
Yeah, maybe one question to Aparna ma'am. And how do you see the ecosystem of funding maybe for a social entrepreneurship NGO versus a private funded company? Maybe you want to touch upon, because that's your area of interest a little bit also, I think, right, Aparna ma'am?
Yes, so actually that was a question I wanted to ask you, Deric. So ask all the speakers here. I see that there are several social impact ventures created by women. Some of them are registered as for-profit but have great social impact. Saral Designs is one amazing example, and then Vivam Agrotech is another amazing example where they are into sustainability and other things. So technically, when you say sustainability, your venture has to sit in the space of three parameters: people, planet, and prosperity. So if you are meeting all these three parameters, you are a sustainable business. But if you meet two of them, you are a viable business. You may become a unicorn, but you may not be sustainable. So that's the thing that the message that sustainable businesses carry all the time, so and convey. So Saral Designs, if you had to look at it, they work in the space of um, what is that, low waste, zero waste, or whatever, but sanitary towels for women. Now, how do they do that? The eco-friendly sanitary towels, they do it through micro women entrepreneurs. So they give it to small self-help group communities where the women are creating these products and selling them at a low cost. So they're looking at profit. They're definitely scaling. They are definitely looking at people and they are looking at prosperity. So that's what you look at, and how they scale. They bring in technology again, which is non-invasive. That's the beauty of a sustainable business, and I just love that model. Now my question back to all the speakers here, and including Kanchan. I know Kanchan for sure, because she's also in the space of lending. She's not really an investor, but she's in the space of lending, and there are other investors also on the call. So my question is, how do these social entrepreneurs who are running not-for-profit companies, how do they generate revenue, and how do they build a scalable business model? How do they speak to investors? What should they speak to them? In fact, do investors even listen to them, is my question.
So, Aparna, maybe I'll take a jab at that, and of course, I want to hear from Kanchan because she's doing something very interesting on the micro lending space, if I'm not wrong. And so, Aparna, to be honest, there are different type of ventures. There are certain impact-based funds. You have people like Action for India, Upaya Ventures, Unlimited India, Avishkar, Umidyar. There are certain of these funds for whom impact is a strong prerogative, right? But at the end of the day, the money that they are raising from is kind of the same investors that a normal VC would raise, right? So for any non-for-profit venture, like you said very correctly, it's not like you have to show a lot of, exponential growth in profits, but at least sustainability should be key, right? And I think one of the other things that some of these social impact ventures look at is that how can you measure the impact? Do you have a standard mechanism to measure the ROI on the impact that you're creating, right? Whether it is, reduced liability on the environment, whether it is increased livelihood, whether it is, maybe, creating, more opportunities for certain marginalized sectors in your community, right? So when you are running a social impact or a not-for-profit organization, you have to be very clear, and you should figure a way that your investor is able to map the value of what you're doing, also in the form of, where you're creating impact, right? It can't be very, very subjective. You have to find an objective way to position that, right? And in fact, Aparna, there are a lot of HNIs outside India that are very, very keen to invest in such ventures, and all of these organizations are somewhere connected to those HNIs, right? So it's just a part of getting into the part of this impact ecosystem. And I think, there are several opportunities there.
So just one question that came out from the answer that you gave. Ganga, just
Yeah, I have. Yeah, please.
So yeah, Ganga, you can come, or shall I ask?
So I just wanted to add
Huh.
Diksha's point. So while she has identified a couple of, sector of profile of people who are investing, I have also seen, from family offices. Now, she made a very valid point of values, right? So in a social enterprise setup, what typically happens is, while the ROI is important, but then the value sometimes takes precedent, right? When you look at investors investing, especially the HNI kind of people. So I have seen, a lot of family businesses, while they're doing the normal business, but there's also this huge concept of giving back to the society and community. While I have seen a lot of family businesses who have actually developed their own social enterprises, NGOs, and various other entities to really look after that area of interest or value system for them. But we are seeing a trend where they're also taking help from such entities. Where they're so it's all about faster and better, right? If there is already a sector or an NGO, a social enterprise who's already working on it, they're more than happy to support it. Of course, they also see how things are executed finally, because ultimately the values have to match. I think that is very critical. So I'm seeing this also as a big sector, and it's not just when we say family offices, it's not the Daburs and the GKMs of the world. We are talking of mid-sized FMBs, family managed businesses, which is anywhere, say 10 crore plus revenue or a group kind of setup. So that's also one area people can look at funding. So that was the point I wanted to add. Thanks.
Yeah, just to take Ganga's point forward, I've just enjoyed my talk here today, right from Deric to Ganga to Koini ma'am, finally Deeksha sharing about her journey, a very exciting one, and would love to know more. So one thing actually I'd just like to give a background that, I think during COVID, I think things changed tremendously. One was clearly a move towards digitization. And the other one was this increased awareness about, all things sustainable. How do we have a cleaner environment? How do we, not damage, the place around us or the environment around us? So earlier also this kind of awareness was there, but somehow it wasn't kind of seeping into the consciousness as to how could it adversely affect us. But ever since COVID, people are being forced to think about these things very seriously, and they have started taking these things very seriously in terms of even investing big time. Even entrepreneurs are looking at all initiatives around environment, sustainability, inclusion, things like that. So I think this is what all this introspection has done to the world. We as multiple countries together, we are being forced to think about why humanity is the biggest thing which we should be focusing on, and not just material profits. And so because of that particular change happening, the pivot happening in the world around me, I actually, as a founder of Loan Genie, started very seriously about thinking about what am I giving back to the environment. And so, which is why, besides giving small personal unsecured loans to millennials, I also looked at ways that I can, make a direct impact immediately, and therefore reached a conclusion that I'm going to be donating 5% of whatever fees that I earn to any charity. So as of now, Akshay Patra happens to be this charity I really admire, appreciate. So looking at that, but going forward, if hopefully if we are able to generate some very good profits, we would like to give percentage of it to various charities which are there, which are associated with youth, which are associated with women, children, generally even men for that matter, because men are also an integral part, and they require all sorts of support and help as well. So that is what I had in mind as far as a for-profit which is looking to make an impact. But there are also not-for-profits who are looking to make an impact. I think these are again causes. A lot of corporates are very willing to help. A lot of funds are also kind of looking to support through their funds, and also today there is no dearth. But I think I would say whichever organization you are, for profit, not for profit, try to look at ways that you can generate some sustainable income which you can pour back into your startup, and basically help it to grow. So one piece of advice would be, even if you are doing a not-for-profit, try to see how can you kind of have a kind of a circular economy, so that one thing leads to the other, and you don't end up being depending a lot on anybody. You're able to show your value, and that's when even if you're not able to generate, let's say, money, that's when people will really appreciate for all the good work that you're doing. Because let's say if you're helping the the lepers or somebody, you're not really generating value, but if you look at how many lives are you touching or transforming, I mean, that is priceless. I mean, you can't really weigh it in terms of money. So even if you're a not-for-profit, I would say, look at impact. And that would, if you create impact, that would really attract everybody else. That would attract the money, the investors, everybody else, and the people, basically, wonderful people to work for you. So that is what I would advise the not-for-profits. But though I am a for-profit with a purpose, that is what. Thank you.
Thank you, Kanchan.
Awesome. I think a great conversation. Kanchan. Thank you so much for your inputs. I think
Deric,
we are very well placed. Great discussion. All the speakers, Ganga, Deeksha, thank you so much. Just want to leave a closing comment and a thought to think about, right? Due to COVID, I think it's been an opportunity. So many startups have actually leveraged this, right? Crisis situation to the best outcome, right? COVID has only accelerated the digital transformation journey for many. And if I have to just compare the Silicon Valley and some of the Indian ecosystem, specifically IIT Bombay, Powai Valley is the new Silicon Valley that is coming up. 5 years back, there was a TVF pictures which talked about Powai Randani starting a Silicon Valley. Probably I was also inspired by that because I'm born and brought up in Powai. And that ecosystem created so many things, and COVID has accelerated it, right? I mean, if you see Silicon Valley startups, very tech driven, WhatsApp had 15-20 employees, 19 billion exit. And if you see Indian startups are maybe very people led than a tech. We think majorly we can solve problems majorly by people. In the West, they think technology can be leveraged. Things are changing now. But just want to leave one thought, and I want to close this and give it over to Priya. How can you actually differentiate your startup, right? That's most of the startups ask me. I also do the same thing. How can I find my USP differentiator, which can increase my valuation to the investors and all, right? You don't probably need to find that differentiator. You can probably do the same thing which they are doing, but you can do it differently, right? Execution could be your differentiator too, right? It's at the end of the day, how finally you execute things. That's the only differentiator. That's the thought I want to leave you with. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Priya, over to you.
Priya, just before that, I just want to say one more thing. Entrepreneurship is a scary, lonely journey, but please don't be afraid to make mistakes. Making mistakes is actually a sign that you are on the right path, right? So many times we feel, things are going wrong, we're not being able to hit bullseye, but actually you don't realize that that's just like Ganga showed that visual, right? Your journey, and there are like treads and curves. It is exactly that, right? So don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Hang in there and finish the journey. Thank you, Deeksha. Thank you, Ganga. Priya, over to you.
Thank you so much. Points, but you have covered all of them and what Deeksha said at the end, and that was something which yesterday spoke to all of you. One of my failures, I shared, fell apart when we started to do something, and just everyone left when we thought there. So what Deeksha said towards the end, right? There'll be failures, and then how to rise and again start on that journey is something all of you have put it out so beautifully. Also about social entrepreneurship, because I am in that sector, and one, like Deeksha and others said, one that it gets us all together, even like beyond boundaries. And second thing is that even in pandemic, for example, what I started working on migrant workers, just with sending them back when they were on the road. So it started, and then looking into their rehabilitation, looking into their ongoing food demands. So I guess pandemic bad in many senses, but in a lot of ways it has also given someone like me, for example, who had me out and out throughout, and I'm a doctoral candidate now, but who wanted to do something in pandemic, was a place, a lot of things to work towards in non-for-profit sector, for that matter, or even I think all of you have laid out things very well, and thank you, Deric, for taking questions as we were going ahead. So that makes my job easier, because I see that you have answered almost all the questions, also laid out few.
Yeah. So, Priya, do you want to ask anybody, for any audience to ask any question by unmuting?
Yes. If anybody wants to ask questions, they can unmute and ask. Srilata, do you want to?
Can
There are, I think Srilata has come on, so I thought she wants to ask. Yes, Srilata.
Okay.
Very good morning, very good morning. And I realized that I have really a big, long way to go. I always boasted that I'm a green entrepreneur for the last 10 years now. But, and as rightly put by Kanchan and Priya, you also, like, social sector every day is a new challenge. And pandemic has been like me, teaching me virtual selling was something that I learned in 2020. I was very hard copy, and I'm still a very hard copy person. And yesterday, in fact, our last time's mentor, Deepa ma'am, was very sweet to call me up and, you know, tell me that I really need to, it's not being commercial, it's being professional, that you need to understand, you know, ki kidhar ja rahe ho, kitna tak jana hai. And I basically work in the environment field. So the whole globe is there, and at this point. So yeah, I really need to learn a lot. As I'm sorry, I mean, you know, right from the word unicorn, that is, I only knew about the fictitious horse that existed, but I didn't know what's a unicorn kind of. I was like, ye kya hota hai? But it's ignorant. But yes, I learned. I promise to learn from all of you. And yes, I really need your guidance as like a junior KG baby kind of. And I promise.
So we are all learning with you, Srilata.
And I think you asked that question on behalf of a lot of us in the beginning itself, to make the conversation easier.
Thank you.
As well. So that's there. That's there.
Any other question? Anybody else? I can see some other entrepreneurs also. Somebody from food tech, Sujana Prachi Raut is here. Anybody else? Anybody with a question?
This is Raji. I'm from Bangalore, and we have started a company which is an agri-tech company manufacturing irrigation controllers. Okay, so once we have received this IIT WiE Pitch Perfect finalist, that certificate and we recently got a grant from Government of India, and we are MVP state, everything is over, and now we are trying to scale up. The initial customer traction we got, we are trying to scale up, and now we want to develop to the second product from the basic one. So now the question I have is that what kind of funding I should go for? If I go for a loan, the continuous revenue I'm not getting every month for an interest or something. And opportunity for funding I'm getting for that, whether I should give the equity, or if so, how much? And these kind of questions is coming to my mind. Should I take it from my friends, or should I take it from my relative, or for funding, or for loan? All this confusion is there at this stage now. Please help.
Probably I'll just touch upon the thing. I don't know, Reggie. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. I don't know the exact startup idea into, but I'll just give you a quickie. It's always a gray area when you start off, right? Like you talk about valuation and how much you want to raise, debt versus equity. There are good plans with a lot of banks out there, ICICI, HDFC, having overdraft concepts, which will give you only when you take money, they charge the interest at 13-14%. It all depends on how much equity you want to retain at the end of the day, right? But I always say bootstrap yourself as much as possible with the 3 Fs, right? Friends, family, and fools. And get the capital initially, get to a working model, and we're talking about your 2.0 product which is going to come. Increase that, get more validation, acceptance, traction increases month on month, traction increases quarter on quarter, you know, the revenue increases, and that's when you can showcase, you'll be more confident and go to the investor saying, this idea has been accepted, there are sales happening. At the end of the day, it's the numbers that matter also, right? There is a validation, and then you get to a funding stage. That would be my initial advice to you.
Thank you, Deric. And Raji,
Aparna ma'am, this one question from my side. Is it? Do we have time?
Just a second. Deeksha was also about to respond to Raji. So her response, and then we'll go to questions. Sorry.
There's a question on the chat also. Yeah. So we'll take the chat question and Raji's question.
Yeah. Raji, again, I think I kind of agree with Deric, and we need a lot more information to be able to help you out. So please feel free to reach out to any of us. But I just want to say one thing, see, your equity is probably the most expensive asset, right? So if you can find another way to fund it, and to make it sustainable and it attractive enough for someone to buy in a stake at a good valuation, that's what you should be aiming for, right? But then again, I think for, I was consulting an agri-tech company, and what I realized, they wanted to raise equity. But when I looked at their, their financial structure, 50% of the capital they wanted to raise was in terms of working capital loans, right? Which is very common for agri. Now, when you are raising for working capital, you do not need to dilute equity. You can go, and there are a lot of working capital loans available, a lot of schemes available that banks are offering, right? So you might want to check that out, right? So always try and see what you need the money for, and if it's if it's a item that can be easily have been given a loan for, don't dilute equity. And just wanted to add that because that's very specific to agri businesses.
So Aparna, Priya, just adding to Deeksha, I think what you said is very profound. So I always have this as a banker. We always have this lending mismatch. You take money for something and use it for something else. So I think what you said, Deeksha, is absolutely like golden words. But just to add to Deeksha, there are mudra schemes. So these are mudra loans given by banks where, see, if you have to go to a bank, Raji, like you said, if you don't have steady incomes every month, you're not going to be very attractive to a bank because you won't be able to show steady cash flows to pay off your to service your loans or pay off your debts, right? But mudra scheme is a loan which actually gives you some leverage. So please look up that. And these are some loans which are not very, it's not sold or it's not showcased by the banks because these are all driven by the government. And that's one point. The second point I want to add to Deeksha and Deric is, see, you're at a stage where you're still taking off. You're at that MVP stage. And I think valuations, etc., happens only when you have had a soft landing with a set of a seed investors, right? So don't indulge in the equity now because valuation is a game. I honestly still find it difficult to convince and understand. Look at, even if you're having monies coming in through your friends, family, or wherever, minus a loan, of course, from the bank, look at quasi debts. Okay, look at convertible instruments. Look at instruments like convertible debts. Look at instruments like preference shares, which you can actually convert it to equity on a future date. So when you can look at instruments which can be converted to equity in your future date, so by then you're steady state on business, you have tractions coming in, there's revenue coming in. So you're able to understand valuation then. Because today valuation, and that's one thing we tell all our startups, though our startups talk about it, and we at SINE as an incubator encourage them to look at convertible instruments so that this whole madness about valuation is taken off their head and they only focus on business and deliver the results. So that's the limited point I wanted to say. Over to you, Priya. Thanks.
Thank you. So we have some questions on the chat, but before that I'll come to Prachi because she had to ask one, and then I'll take the questions from the chat. Yeah, Prachi, please go ahead.
Yes, so we are a engineering college based in Mumbai suburbs, and we have a small incubator of our own. These are just very baby steps, right? Not very big setup, but we do have 4 to 5 groups, students groups, campus startup groups. Even one of them is being mentored by Deric, so Deric knows very well our and also Aparna ma'am. We had invited Aparna ma'am as a chief guest at one of our programs. So my question is, how a small incubator like ours right now it's a virtual incubation given the conditions for the academic institutions. So how can we collaborate? What are the opportunities for us to collaborate with SINE or with Deeksha? I would like to know that.
So Deeksha, can I take it first, please? Okay, so basically, Prachi, thanks for it, and it's really humbling to know that even if you're a small incubator, there's an attempt to really engage and get students to do work on these lines. So I think before collaboration is a way to go, because today, as an incubator community, we are also started consolidating, right? We have seen collaboration at countries, businesses, investors, but even incubators are now collaborating. I'm working with ISBA on a new model of incubation where we're looking at distributed network where it's going to be driven by Government of India. So when you talk about collaborations, you really play on each other's strength. Right? Today, like any startup or like a person in a co-founding team where no two people are perfect. So we encourage startups to have founders in such a way you complement each other's skills. Likewise, the same principle flows with the incubators. So if you have as an incubator, you are supported by a host institution, right? And as a host institution, I'm sure over the years you have developed certain core competence, skills and areas, etc., which you think you're really good at. You have the right lab support, infra support, funding support, faculty support. You've also had some very good alumni who stepped out and doing well, been there, done that. So if you've identified that, and if you're also looking at what are the areas, so you do a kind of area saying that these are the areas you need to really, improve upon. You can actually collaborate with incubators where they are looking at your areas as a core skill for them. So collaboration is all about complementing each other's skill. It could be not only the areas of sectors, but it could also be sharing of lab facilities. I mean, that's also a great point of collaboration, because today the government funded lab facilities, which we have, it's not just meant for IITB only. We have to open it out to other startups from outside the ecosystem. So there are plethora of opportunities, and I think, Prachi, you have already taken the first step by coming and attending this session. Now it is important for you to really get you to, and it's not just SINE. Today we have METI of Tide 2.0 scheme is talking of, different mentoring. They are expecting incubators to mentor upcoming incubators, and we run standard programs for them. Please visit ISBA, ISBA. It's an association of incubators. I would encourage your institution to be part of that. ISBA is actually helping a lot of incubators on these lines. So these are some things which you can actually look at. And happy, you can always drop in a mail, like you're already in touch with Aparna. You can always reach out to us through Aparna, and welcome to SINE to see what we do. Thanks.
Thanks, Ganga.
Yeah. Thank you. Priya, just one request. After you take this last question, which is on the chat, I think there's a question on environmental impact.
Yeah, impact.
So if you can take that, and then I request all the participants to switch on their videos for one group photograph.
Yeah.
I wish we could do this live, but this is the best we can do.
Yes, Deeksha was.
I was just going to echo what Ganga said to Prachi. Please feel free to reach out. Happy to see how our ecosystem can support you. We do a lot of work with corporates, right? Because we see that as a very emerging opportunity for a lot of corporate innovation to be directed towards startups, right? Or even fund some of those initiatives. So Prachi, happy to kind of take this on with you.
And Deric is also.
Yes, yeah. Thanks, Deeksha.
You have already Deric's support, so you're already in good hands. So
yes, he has been a big help for us. He's our alumni member, so he's doing a fantastic job. Thanks, Deric.
Always there to help. Great discussion, guys. What else? I mean,
so there are a couple of questions, Deric. Okay. I think Priya's handling.
Yeah. There is, I'll just quickly read out this one question, which is on impact. I'll just read it out. It's by Radhika Rao. She says, how does one measure impact objectively in seemingly ambiguous spaces like biodiversity and conservation education? For a collective working on engaging with, say, school children from tribal communities on environment and wildlife conservation related issues, how would you recommend assessing impact? So our question is majorly around assessing impact in spaces like say biodiversity or conservation or education there. So it's basically how do we assess impact. Who would want to take a go?
Let me just, for me, just my take, I'm primarily not in that space, but for me, impact is a no-brainer because I see the impact. I mean, being from the corporate space also, right? I'm much more of a outcome-driven person, right? At the end of the day, what outcome you're creating, right? Impact is absolutely directly proportional to the outcome that you create. Be it like wildlife conservation domain, or be it even in the green space, right? If you're talking about simple example, right? If you're talking about helping someone go green completely, or be a vegetarian to help the planet Earth, how are you, without using probably Fitbit, right? How are you actually helping him or her increase the health statistics, for example, right? Are you helping folks to be much more fitter? Can you actually measure that, right? That's the impact we are talking about. How many tigers, for example, have you saved till now, right? That's the outcome I would like to see. What is the impact that you've really created in terms of not qualitative but quantitative analysis, in terms of numbers, and that should echo. That should be in your financial statement in terms of the traction that you create, and that should increase over a period of time. So impact for me is outcome. It's a number at the end of the day that you have to drive, right, Radhika?
Just recently, the court in Calcutta has valued the tree of a value of a tree to about 5 lakh rupees based on its age and things like that. So these are the, yes, now all natural resources are getting economic. What's the value of a tiger in a forest? So these things are valued, and that is what we are talking about, environmental economics here, basically valuing natural resources. But I really feel that it's very important. It's really very important as an environmentalist. Today, I'm fighting a case where 431 trees are going to be cut outside my house. And the government, just the municipality just feels that is vis-a-vis development. Aapko 6 lane ka rasta milega. You'll get a road which is 6 lane. Isn't that more important when lakhs of vehicles, and you will reduce the pollution, they will go at a particular space and all that stuff, vis-a-vis your 60-year-old tree. That's that kind of thing. So it's very, very important. And as you rightly put, more than the children, these people only understand numbers. They don't understand emotions. So you can't stand there and tell them that kadam ka tree mein abhi phool aata hai and itna bird aata hai aur uska nest. They don't understand. If you tell them that a kadam tree costs this much rupees, then that makes more sense. Okay. And there's a new amendment in the tree thing also. I don't want to go on an environment.
No,
thank you so much.
ma'am, I think completely agree. I mean, I think being from Mumbai person, right? I mean, in RML colony, there was a metro shed which was being removed, and so many trees were going to be. So someone put a stay there, and there was so much environmentalists supporting that cause, right? At the end of the day, what is the impact that you're creating? The case has to be created, right? Because this has to be fought legally and constructively, right? That would be my take. But at the end of the day, people need to understand what is the impact in terms of outcome to their own life, right? It's not about me. It's not about as an investor talking from their sense, right? It's how do you make the people realize the value.
And even unfortunately, after Corona, no one understands the value of oxygen. I'm sorry to say this.
Well, yeah, we had times where.
Yeah, but I guess it has made a very good point there, and as Srilata, about that we might have a lot of even in our impact statement we might have a lot of points, but by the end of the day, at times the kind of audience we're dealing with, they'll understand outcome in terms of numbers. That's what Deric is trying to point us to, practically, if we think, and that's where we should also then, depending on audience and who we are trying to cater and who we are trying to say, then ask to invest in our thing, or pay heed to what we're trying to say. I think we need to just mold our things like that. And I guess we are now at 12:24. All of us here are on LinkedIn, I believe, and some of us have also put it on the chat, so people can reach out to each other and take the conversations forward. But I guess we are towards the end.
Photograph,
and yeah, and
one
Aparna ma'am, you can
photograph,
just
please put on
do
your
a
videos.
small vote of thanks as well, Aparna ma'am, and then we
After the
all
photographs, after the photograph.
so people don't go.
So
Okay.
everybody just say trees.
Just
You
one
get a very big
photograph.
smile on your
Nishchay,
face when you say
we're all
that.
ready. Yes, say trees.
Yeah. So just say
Awesome.
trees. You get a very wonderful smile because we were just speaking on the last environment note. Yeah.
Let's have everyone, switch on their cameras.
Please switch on your camera. Quickly, Nishchay is taking the
Yeah.
photograph.
Nishchay is taking the picture, I believe.
Yes, I have taken the pictures.
Okay, it's done.
Please share the picture.
Thank you, Nishchay, for this and for all the help that you and the team behind it, all the interns, the students have been helping us with coordinating and also sending me questions in direct messages. So Yogita, thanks for that. And yeah, over to you, Aparna ma'am, for a vote of thanks.
Yes. So I really don't know where to begin and where to end. This was such an enlightening session. For me, particularly because I've been in the ecosystem, I'm working with entrepreneurs day in and day out, and we see the way people go in for vesting. They do not understand equity share and things like that, and how we kind of talk to people. We talk to them at ideation stage. It's almost like mining, you go deep down, and from there you're pulling out ideas, articulating them. Then you see these ideas taking shape, and then they go off on the ground, and suddenly some ideas run immediately, some ideas take longer to grow, like the bamboo tree. Maybe they'll suddenly shoot up. So yes, it's this session has been so beautiful, and thank you very much, first of all, to all the speakers. I know all of you are so short on time. In spite of that, we've had 3 or 4 meetings on what the session should be, how can we bring value to the listeners, and make it meaningful for everybody. So they've taken time out, and each one, Deeksha is out on the street and she's on a call. The Deric is in between meetings, he's on the call. Ganga is in between, handling home stuff and her own sessions and meetings, and she's on calls, and plus the WhatsApp and all of that. So thank you to the speakers for adding so much value. Priya was called in at the last minute as an anchor because, so thank you, Priya, for stepping in and doing such a beautiful job on that. The backbone of this entire thing has been the E-Club, who is instrumental in getting all this information out to you, actually organizing this, the logistics. So thank you very much to the E-Club members. I see Deeksha and Nishchay here, but there are others who are working behind the scenes. And there are the interns. These are young interns from across India who have joined us, thanks to the online working mode. And so you can see Yogita there, and I can see some other names. So it's been a great job. And the audience has been absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much for being a wonderful audience. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so
yes,
much.
any other
Thank you so
questions?
much.
You're all. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you in the next session, everyone.
Can we close?
Absolutely.
You stay
Yes,
connected.
see you in
Thank
the
you so
next
much.
session. Yes, that reminds me. The next session is a very exciting session. We are launching Netritva Leadership Talks by women leaders and entrepreneurs. Our inaugural leader is going to be Vani Kola. The next session is 31st July. Please look out for the registration details and sign in. Make sure you do not miss it. And very limited seats because it's gone all over the world already, this information. So please make sure that you sign up immediately. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.